I want to start this closing wrap up by saying that I am enormously impressed by certainly the number of registrations for this event online, but also the number of people who actually came in person and persisted through the entire morning here. So what we wanted to do, we have one camera set up there. We want to show everybody online, everybody who is still here in the room. And I want you to wave to them. Thank you very much. Kiki, you and I, we've had the privilege of reflecting on each of the sessions thus far, and it seems that we have a very, very similar approach to things. We have highlighted many of the same things. We've heard also at least a synthesis of some of the inputs from the participants online. I express my apologies to those in the room. We've discriminated against you in that regard. We haven't been able to elicit questions and conversation from the room. You are all going to receive, whether online or in person, a follow-up email for a survey, for an assessment. Now, to the extent that you have issues, questions, comments, points that you would like to pursue further, I invite you to use that survey form to contribute those points so that we can find the ways in which we can follow up to recognize your engagement, your interest, and hopefully respond in some meaningful way. So please, I encourage you to do that. But then, Kiki, I think it's our job to try and wrap this up in an appropriate way.
Indeed.
How on earth can we possibly do that?
You know, as people of faith, or in a room filled with people of faith, I think we'll draw on our collective sense of hope that we can pull this off. But really, I want to echo some of what Peter has said and thank all of you in the room. Thank all of the panelists. Thank all of the participants online. I was monitoring the engagement. When we started, we had about 400 people online. And then, a few minutes ago, it dropped down to about 200, which is a 50% attrition. That's amazing for any 1 hour or 90-minute event, much less we've been here for 4 hours. So it really just speaks to the commitment, the engagement, the enthusiasm of this community. And that's something that we really need to carry forward. When we started in the morning, we talked about the objective of why we're here today at this 11th symposium. And we really wanted to showcase the engagement of faith-based actors on these global issues. We wanted to examine, the shrinking civic space. We wanted to figure out how we could partner more strategically and do more with less. And I think it's safe to say that we did that. We did that and more. We hit the mark talking about multilateral processes, the opportunities that exist, what we can do differently, better. We talked about gender justice, gender equality, the realities on the ground for millions of women and girls, and where the faith community and faith leaders and institutions can use their privileged positions, their voices, their reach, their advocacy to amplify norms, amplify values around gender equality. We then went into talking about peace in conflict. I mean, my colleague also from the secretariat mentioned the fact that we have, the mission of the UN was really to prevent a third world war, and that while that is the case, it saddens all of us to recognize that we've never been closer to the brink of a third world war than we are right now with the record numbers of conflicts and crises. But we also understand, and it's in a way it's a little embarrassing to admit that it's at this critical moment that we are realizing once more the essential role that faith actors are playing and can continue to play in the peace building process. The ASG from UN Women was chatting, I can share, she was chatting with Peter and I as she was leaving, and she was telling us about a senior leadership meeting that concluded yesterday, and issues around faith-based engagement in the religion, faith, and culture space, where put centrally on the table, and this has not been the case for a very long time. That's the fact of the matter, because across the UN system, there's an understanding that there is an opportunity to collaborate more strongly and more strategic with you all so that we can actually course correct on a lot of the challenges that we're facing. And to me, that's sort of the heart of the conversations we were having here today. How do we do that? What are the opportunities? On the UN side, there are a lot of opportunities. I hear very strongly, it's two things. I'll be frank with you. It's two things. On the one hand, there are spaces where civil society and faith actors can engage, but there may be a gap in terms of knowledge and awareness. And on the other hand, there are times when the spaces are just not inclusive at all, and that's on us. So, how do we address both of these things? How do we ensure that there's an open, ongoing dialogue that is not events based, but is continuous? And you all have access to the information, and we have access to you. That's something that we need to think about how to take forward seriously. We mentioned a number of events on our multilateral calendar that I would like for you to put on yours if they aren't already. You know, the Financing for Development conference that's taking place in June in Spain. The World Summit on Information Society, that came up a number of times. Our colleagues in Geneva mentioned it. This is in July. The Second World Summit on Social Development, it's in Doha in November. The COP in Brazil, the Conference of Parties in Brazil, that's happening. I believe it's in November as well. But these are spaces where it will be essential to have faith-based advocacy on any number of issues. And as has been the case in the past, you can count on UNFPA. So I lead our faith, religion, and culture engagement at UNFPA. You can count on UNFPA to collaborate with, ahead of these events. So let's think about how we can do things a little bit better and with a view towards making some impact together. Over to you, Peter.
Well, thank you very much, Kiki, for that acknowledgement and invitation on behalf of the UN system. But now I want to speak to my civil society and faith-based colleagues in the room. All of these years, let's be honest, we've been focused on how we can improve our access to and influence upon UN policymaking. But let's be honest, the current moment globally requires much more of us than simply planning for our next side event. As Niradzai in the very opening of this meeting said, the faith communities were multilateral systems long before the multilateral system. I think it's time for us to own that identity as an expression of multilateral commitment, of transnational identity, to own that and assert it and proclaim it and advocate for it in a moment when politically, geopolitically, the system is fragmenting. And there is a real and present threat to the very principle of multilateral cooperation at precisely the moment when we need much, much more, not less, multilateral cooperation. I think it's our responsibility to be advocates for that principle and for the UN system as an instrument for that multilateral cooperation, not simply to see how we can improve our footprint within the UN system. So I want to leave you with that thought. To me, the clouds outside over the Secretariat look a little bit lighter than they were, but there is still no sun. Those clouds are likely to be there for the foreseeable future, metaphorically. But the sun is there. And if there's one thing I take away from this gathering, is a real sense of collective commitment to seeking the sun. Thank you very much. Now, before we leave, though, we have to say thanks to many, many players who have made this possible. I want to start by thanking all the excellent speakers and moderators in this series of sessions. Thank you so much. And I want to thank my colleagues and counterparts and friends in the organizing committee who've worked very hard under difficult conditions to bring this event together. Thank you very, very much indeed. I want to thank the hosts and supporters that have enabled us to meet here physically in these premises and online. Thank you for your hospitality. And I want to thank the interpreters and the communication specialists, my colleagues Marcelo and Walter, who have made it possible for us to understand, to see, to hear each other. And amongst other things, I want to point out again that the interpretation has been made available in French, Spanish, Arabic, and International Sign Language. And this is not just a technical issue. It is a statement of commitment to linguistic inclusiveness. And finally, I want to thank all of you, audience members here in person and online. This is an event, but our engagement is not event-based. So let's continue to work together. And I thank my sister Kiki for her wonderful partnership in moderating this event. Thank you, Kiki.